They hit the field on Monday, but certainly they had to address some big news, and that was the future of Bryant. That decision has been made. They have cut the 9-year veteran. Well, Jerry Jones, he released a statement just a few minutes ago saying, as an organization, we hold Bryant in the highest regard. We're grateful for his passion, spirit, contributions to this team for the past 8 years. He will always be a valued member of our family. This was not an easy decision. It was made based upon doing what we believe is in the best interest of the Dallas Cowboys. We arrived at this crossroad collectively with input from several voices within the organization. Ultimately, we determined it was time to go in a new direction. So that's from the owner. Let's hear from the receiver. Let's hit the tweet deck. Dez tweeted, let's start the process. Then another tweet. Cowboy Nation, I need you to know this wasn't my decision. I will always love y'all. Forever Dallas in my heart. So what happened here, guys? Well, Dez and Dak simply didn't connect. Prescott barely completed half his passes to Bryant over his career, averaging a full yard more per attempt to other receivers since the start of 2016. But it wasn't just Dallas wideout Dez who didn't stack up to. The 52% completion percentage between Dak and Dez is the worst of any quarterback receiver combo in the league. That's a strong stat right there, and that certainly tells you the story. So our senior insider, Chris Mortensen, on the desk. And Chris, you're in touch with all parties in this. You've been all over this story. What more can you tell us about this meeting today?
Well, listen, we saw a statement from Jerry Jones, and he said, several people in the organization weighed in on this, and he makes the final call. We talked about this yesterday on NFL Live. When he cut T.O., he said, T.O.'s here, and I'm here, but the Cowboys are there. Cowboys are bigger than anybody. But several people in this organization, and you can say probably from coaches to personnel, to even his son, Stephen Jones, I think there was a feeling that it was time to move on. He's not producing at a level we thought, in part because of injuries, since we signed him to the big contract in 2015. And, oh, by the way, we have to get contracts done with right guard Zach Martin, a Pro Bowl player, and with DeMarcus Lawrence, their franchise guy, who's taking up $17 million on the cap. So I think it was a matter of performance plus the need to just flat out move on. And they have added receivers to their roster this offseason.
Certainly a lot for this Dallas Cowboys team to address. But when you hear on April 13th that they decide to cut him, the first thing you think is the timing. That for Dez and that for the Dallas Cowboys, it doesn't seem to work to their advantage. Field, what do you make of the timing?
Well, a couple of things. They do begin their offseason program on Monday. So in some ways, that was a soft deadline. At that point, you are back to work, so to speak. And not that there won't be other player acquisitions, but you kind of scrub the decks of players that you don't anticipate having around. On the other hand, I understand when people say, why not do this the day after the season was over? Why not do this at the beginning of the free agency? First of all, I don't think this was an easy decision. This was not something they just snapped their fingers and said, let's do it. Several people contributed to this conversation, according to Jerry Jones. Moreover, maybe if the Cowboys didn't need to make a move that would be in part impacted by the $8.5 million in cap space they picked up, they wouldn't make this move. They may have said, listen, until we need the cap space, our hand is not being forced on this Dez Bryant decision. I think it's all of those factors in sum lead to the timing of this release.
Yeah, this was a domino effect. I couldn't agree more, right? And to Field's point, this is the business decision made by the owner and basically the organization as a whole of, hey, we need cash. This is what we're going to do. This is the worst part of the business, but this is the business of football. You're being paid as a one. You got a $16 million plus cap number. You haven't produced like a one in the last 2 years. As much as we like you, as much as we're fond of you, what you've done, what you've added to this organization as a whole, all of those things, no one can take any of that away. But at the end of the day, this is dollars and cents. And at this point of the year, they're going to start the preseason now. This is where they're moving. The OTAs are coming. Let the guys who they think may get reps take those reps, because you're not taking that away when a guy's on the field. So now is definitely the time, and they had to make the move.
But the fact they didn't talk pay cut or restructure tells you that all those other people in the organization, they wanted to move on.
Right.
And it was just a matter of Jerry making the final decision. Okay, I'm with you on this one. The final decision is made by Jerry, but I think there was almost a unanimous sentiment in the organization that he's not the player. He doesn't fit us right now. we need to move on, and Jerry finally signed off on it.
This could have happened much earlier. This was a team that was in the market for Sammy Watkins,
Right.
at the beginning portion of free agency. If Sammy had been signed up, Dez Bryant may have been a free agent a month and a half ago or a month ago when free agency started. They didn't need to create this $8.5 million in cap space. They mostly went bargain hunting in free agency. Now that need could evolve, whether it's because a Zach Martin deal is imminent, the DeMarcus Lawrence contract could be, extended beyond the current franchise tag year. But for now, the Cowboys create $8.5 million in cap space. Dez Bryant now looking for a new home.
And you saw their numbers. They're the lowest tandem, right? The lowest duo in the league. So to Mort's point, everybody in the organization is like, hey, listen, money aside, it's not producing. It's not working. So we have to go a different direction and find someone that's going to click with Dak and the Ezekiel Elliott plan and the whole way we're going to run our offense. He hasn't gotten involved in the way we wanted it to. So it's more than just the dollar side.
Yeah.
It is hey, we're gonna formally say this isn't going to work.
And, Jeff, that quote from Stephen Jones on our friend Ed Warder's podcast about how Dak Prescott isn't a Tony Romo, where Tony Romo worked great with Dez Bryant.
Right.
He needs a receiver to run crisper routes, stuff that they're studying in that meeting room needs to be seen out in the field, and that's not really what Dak's style is. So that really stood out to me a few months ago when he said that, because that told you a lot. But in the end, as Chris, you point out, Jerry makes the decision, at the end of the day.
It's the final call, but I think it was obvious that the rest of the organization felt this was the move to make.
Yeah. All right, so I love Twitter. Here's why. Dez, back on it again. Here's the latest tweet. If I didn't have my edge, I got it now. I'm sorry, they gotta feel me. It's personal. It's very personal. So we aren't wondering how he feels about this decision.
If I didn't have my edge is a red flag to me right there. What do you mean if he actually puts the if in this himself, that he didn't have the same edge as he had maybe when he got paid that big contract in 2015? That's a red flag.
Do you think that's reaction to maybe what Jerry told him, or is that just reaction to fans and media?
It could be that. I remember back in 2010, I was in the Chiefs front office at that point, working in the scouting department, and we had the 5th overall pick. And Dez Bryant, on talent, was in that conversation to be one of the top 5 or 6 picks. But part of the conversation with Dez obviously went way beyond the talent, the ability that he showed at Oklahoma State. It was, can this energy and this emotion and this edge that he just referenced be perhaps his greatest strength or perhaps his biggest vice at the same time? As Moore just said, if that edge is a sometimes, not an always part of your game, it can impact you. And I think that some of those numbers between Dez and Dak last year, we can't make that simply about Dez. Some of it was about Dak as a thrower as well.
And Zeke Elliott not being
available.
Yeah, that definitely plays.
But clearly as a player.
Let me say this about it, because from what he said on it, this is a painful day. So let's not read too much into, right? It hurts. You just lost, you've been there. You have poured everything you have into being the best receiver you can be for this team. There is nothing easy about this. So whatever he's going to say today, all those feelings, all those emotions, take it all with a grain of salt. It is a painful day, and it is personal.
Yeah.
And it's personal for every player, for their families, their wives, their children, their extended families. It is personal. This is what we have done. This is what we've sowed everything into our entire lives, right? It encompasses every area and every facet of your life. So be careful we don't jump on, what he's saying. He's hurting and he's going to voice it, but make no mistake, the guy still wants to play football and he'll find a home to go play.
Yeah, the feelings are certainly very raw at this moment. So we talk about, does he have the edge? Has he lost it? Can he perhaps go back to the receiver that he was, that we saw, just 3 years ago? Let's talk landing spots now. What team could use a Dez Bryant? And granted, I was playing a little game of pretend when this news broke. I said, imagine if he went to the Patriots and they pulled sort of what they did with Randy Moss and he reinvigorated his career.
He's not Randy Moss.
But he's not. He's going to turn 30 in November. So let's talk about teams out there right now that could use a receiver like Dez. Field, what do you think?
Well, let's start. Before we get to teams specifically, Diana, in the 30 or so minutes before we went on the air, some conversation with people around the NFL. Not exactly, but in some ways, this is comparable to Richard Sherman being released in this regard. A player that you knew at the apex of his career might have been the best at his particular position. Dez is not coming off of a major injury like Richard Sherman is, but some of it might be your interest in Dez could be different if it's a one-year deal worth $4 million versus teams that will be interested in giving Dez a multi-year deal that might be comparable to, or maybe not quite as robust as Sammy Watkins or Allen Robinson. So I think that some of it depends on what Dez wants, right?
Well,
or what he's willing to take.
I look at Dez, and in fact, I think the skill set's kind of similar, which is Alshon Jeffrey when he was let go by the Bears. The Eagles signed him to a one-year deal, and he was willing to sign a one-year deal, I think for $7 million or right around there, and it paid off for him with a new contract. And I think that's kind of what Dez probably has to do right here. I'm not sure.
Or maybe a contract with incentives, too, to perhaps try to prove that he still has it. Jeff?
From a player perspective, for where he is in his career, obviously close to 30 years old or 30 years old, right in that realm, go somewhere you're going to win. I can tell you, you don't want to go anywhere where, winning is secondary because you're going to make a little more money here or there, right? So go to where you're going to win, which is going to limit the field of where he wants, and go play for that one-year deal. Go get it. Get that money that you're going to get, whatever it is. Because, listen, you would have made the same if Dallas would have made you take that pay cut. There's not anybody out there who's got all this money. It's April. They've already spent the money, right?
Yep.
The die has been cast. We know
teams
what that
you're
looks
talking
like.
about.
Yeah, exactly. All that. Yeah, they've planned ahead. You can go to a bad team, make a bunch of money. Don't do that. Think about now being, going somewhere you can go win. Go make that money, but go win, more importantly, if you're Dez Bryant.
Cleveland would be interesting.
I was say, of the teams on this that have the most cap room as of right now, none of those actually strikes me as an obvious suitor for Dez Bryant, but, a couple of teams, and we'll talk about suitors or potential suitors throughout the show. I do think Arizona has a dramatic need at wide receiver. The question might be, is Dez comparable to Larry Fitzgerald from a skill set standpoint? Not carbon copies, but in some ways similar. And then Seattle, I think, is the other team. The elephant in the room is that this team certainly needs other pass catchers because right now it's Doug Baldwin, it's Tyler Lockett, it's a lot of, unproven type players. Jerron Brown signed from Arizona. So maybe those would be a couple of teams that might profile as, not totally rebuilding, but do have the space for another pass catcher.
All right, later on in the show, we're actually going to take a look at the Dallas Cowboys roster with Dez no longer on it. So we'll discuss that in just a few. But guys, still to come here on the show. In honor of Friday.